The Sacred Letters, a story of Nesimi and Hurufism. Nevertheless, Al-Arina. In the heart of the 14th century, when empires clashed and the Silk Road carried more than just silk, it carried ideas, dreams, and dangerous truths, there lived a poet whose words would echo through eternity. His name was Imaduddin Nesimi, and this is the story of how the mysticism of letters transformed his soul and led him to the most extraordinary martyrdom in Islamic history. But to understand Nesimi, we must first understand Hurufism, the secret doctrine that saw God in every letter, divinity in every human face, and infinity in the finite world. Act 1. The Birth of Mysteries. Chapter 1. The City of Winds. The year is 1369. In the ancient city of Shamaki, known as the City of Winds, in what is now Azerbaijan, a child is born to a noble Sayyid family, descendants of the Prophet Muhammad himself. They name him Ali Imaduddin, but the world will know him as Nesimi, the breeze, for his words would blow across continents like wind across the steppes. Shamaki was no ordinary city. It stood at the crossroads of civilizations, a place where Persian merchants argued with Chinese traders, where Sufi mystics debated with Orthodox scholars, where the echoes of ancient Zoroastrian fire temples mingled with the calls to prayer from minarets. Young Nesimi. My father taught me the Quran before I could write my own name. But it was the calligrapher in the bazaar, the old man with ink-stained fingers, who first showed me that letters were not just sounds. They were living beings, each with a soul, each with a secret to tell. Young Ali was brilliant. By age 12, he had memorized the entire Quran. By 15, he was composing poetry in 3 languages, Azerbaijani, Persian, and Arabic. But knowledge alone could not satisfy the hunger in his heart. He began to frequent the tekkes, the Sufi lodges where dervishes whirled and seekers of truth gathered. It was there that he first heard whispers of a revolutionary teaching spreading from Persia, a teaching that would change everything. Chapter 2. Fazlullah and the Science of Letters. To understand what drew Nesimi so powerfully, we must journey to the city of Astarabad in Persia, to the year 1340, to witness the birth of one of Islam's most controversial mystical movements. Fazlullah Astarabadi, later called Naimi, was born into a world of mystical ferment. The great Sufi martyr Mansur al-Hallaj had been executed centuries before for proclaiming, Ana al-Haq, I am the truth. But his ideas lived on in secret. Young Fazlullah, speaking to his teacher, Master, if God created man in his image, and if we are truly his Khalifa, his representatives on earth, then why do we treat the human being as insignificant? Why do we not see that every face is the face of the divine? Teacher, careful, young Fazlullah. Such thoughts have led many to the executioner's block. Fazlullah, then let me study further, until I can express this truth in a way that cannot be denied. And study he did. Fazlullah delved into the ancient science of letters, the belief that each letter of the Arabic and Persian alphabets contained cosmic significance. The Arabic alphabet had 28 letters, the Persian 32. These numbers, Fazlullah believed, were not random. 28, he taught, represented the 28 lunar mansions, the phases of the moon, the cycles of time itself. 32 represented the hidden architecture of creation, the levels of existence, the chambers of the heart, the stations on the mystic's journey to God. Fazlullah, teaching his followers, listen carefully. When God said kun, be, and creation came into existence, what was kun? It was letters. The Arabic letter kaf and the letter nun. Creation itself is made of letters. The Quran says, we created man in the best of molds. Do you understand? The human face, the human form. It is composed of the same letters that spell out the divine names. This was the essence of Hurufism. The human being was not separate from God, but was the very manifestation of divine attributes. Every face contained the word Allah, if you knew how to read it. The features of the human face, the eyes, the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth. Chapter 3. The Conversion. Nesimi was 25 years old when he first encountered Hurufism. By this time, he was already known as a talented poet, but he felt empty, as if his verses were beautiful shells with no pearl inside. I had read the philosophers Ibn Sina, Ibn Arabi, the great minds of our tradition, but their abstractions did not satisfy me. Then I heard of the Hurufis, of their master Fazlullah, and something in my soul said, go, seek, find. Nesimi traveled to Tabriz, where a community of Hurufis had gathered after their master's death. There he met Ali al-Allah, one of Fazlullah's chief disciples. You come seeking truth, poet? I come seeking whatever will make my poetry more than decoration, more than entertainment for bored courtiers. Then look at your hand. Tell me what you see. I see a hand. Flesh, bone, skin. Look deeper. Count your fingers. 5 fingers on each hand, 10 in total. These are the 10 stations of spiritual ascent. Look at the lines in your palm. They form letters, Arabic letters. Your body is a book, Nesimi. You are a walking Quran. You are the divine word made flesh. It was a moment of awakening. Nesimi began to study Hurufism intensely. He read Fazlullah's works, the Javedan al-Kabir, the Great Eternal Book, the love inscriptions, the dream inscriptions. He learned the numerology, the letter science, the mystical anthropology that placed humanity at the center of divine manifestation. I am the speaker of the holy secrets. I am the treasure of the divine mysteries. From pre-eternity I was manifest in the form of man. Don't be surprised if I say I am God. These were dangerous words. But Nesimi had found his truth, and he would spend the rest of his life and his death proclaiming it. Act 2, The Poet's Journey. Chapter 4, Words That Could Kill. The late 14th and early 15th centuries were a time of tremendous upheaval. Timur the Lame, Tamerlane, was carving out an empire with unprecedented brutality. Entire cities were razed, pyramids built from the skulls of the defeated. In such times, who had time for mystical poetry? But Nesimi believed that precisely in such dark times, his message was most needed. If people could understand their divine nature, perhaps the violence would cease. Perhaps humanity would recognize itself in the other. Nesimi, speaking to fellow Hurufis. Brothers and sisters, we must not hide our light. The Master Fazlullah died for this truth, but his death only proved his teaching, that the divine accepts crucifixion for the sake of awakening humanity. We must be bold. Nesimi's poetry in this period reached extraordinary heights. He wrote in the ghazal form, love poetry, but every verse carried layers of meaning. Nesimi, reciting, look at my face, for I am the text of the eternal book. If you are truly a reader, read me, line by line. I am not apart from the divine essence. I am the manifestation of the ultimate mystery. In Azerbaijani, his native tongue, he was even more daring. Nesimi, reciting in passionate tones. If you're not a devil, know and study man. Speak of Adam's essence, origin, and sway. In Adam's being, understand what is contained, for heaven and earth exist within his frame. But his words reached the wrong ears. Orthodox scholars in Tabriz began to preach against the Hurufis. They called them heretics, pantheists, incarnationists, every damning label they could conjure. Orthodox scholar, preaching in mosque. These people deny the transcendence of God. They claim divinity for themselves. They must be stopped before they corrupt the entire Ummah. Nesimi had to flee Tabriz. He traveled to Baghdad, to Damascus, to various courts where he hoped to find protection. He was extraordinarily productive during these years of wandering. His 3 divans, his collections in Azerbaijani, Persian, and Arabic, were composed during this period. Chapter 5, The Courts and the Caravan Roads. Despite the danger, Nesimi was welcomed in many places. His reputation as a master poet preceded him. Court poets and scholars wanted to hear his verses, even if they didn't agree with his theology. Sultan, your poetry is magnificent, Nesimi. Why do you insist on these controversial theological positions? If you would just stick to conventional themes, I could make you my court poet. Your Majesty, a poet who only speaks what is safe to speak is not a poet. He is a parrot. I write what I must write. What truth demands I write. Truth has gotten many men killed. Then I am in good company with the prophets and saints. But Nesimi was not simply seeking martyrdom. He was building something, a network of believers, a literary movement, a new way of reading the divine in the world. He attracted followers everywhere he went. Some were drawn by the poetry, others by the philosophy, still others by the promise of a more immediate personal relationship with the divine than Orthodox Islam seemed to offer. Master, when you say we are divine, does this mean we can do as we please? No. To recognize your divine nature is not to be freed from ethics. It is to be bound by the highest ethics. If you are truly divine, if God manifests through you, then every action must be worthy of the divine. Do you understand? This teaching demands more of us, not less. Nesimi's understanding of Hurufism was sophisticated. It wasn't mere antinomianism, the rejection of law and ethics. It was rather a transformation of ethics from external command to internal necessity. When the lover becomes one with the beloved, all commands and prohibitions fall away. Not because law disappears, but because the lover's will becomes identical with divine will. The one who loves truly cannot sin, for love itself is the highest law. But such nuanced theology was lost on his persecutors, who saw only blasphemy in his claims of divine unity. Chapter 6. The Shadow of Persecution. By 1410, Nesimi was in his early 40s. He had been wandering for nearly 20 years, always one step ahead of those who wanted to silence him. He had seen fellow Hurufis arrested, executed, burned alive. The Hurufis were being hunted throughout the Islamic world. Their books were burned, their gatherings were raided, and yet they persisted. Brothers and sisters, some of you have asked me why we continue to proclaim our truths when it brings such persecution. I tell you, silence is also a kind of death, and worse, for it is death of the spirit. Let our enemies kill the body if they must. They cannot touch the truth we carry. But Master, should we not be strategic? Should we not practice taqiyya, concealment, as other persecuted groups do? Each must choose their own path. I do not judge those who conceal their beliefs to survive, but I have been given a gift of words, and I must use it. What purpose does a lamp serve if it is hidden under a basket? During this period, Nesimi wrote some of his most powerful verses, poetry that would survive him and inspire generations. He wrote of love, but not the courtly love of troubadours. He wrote of love as the force that dissolves the barrier between human and divine. From head to foot, I am the incarnate Quran. Read me, if you are a genuine reader of that holy book. The heart's four-chambered house is the Kaaba true. If you are a pilgrim, enter here and make your circuit. He wrote of the human face as a mystical text. Open your eyes and see the face of the friend. There you will read the mystic name of God. The curve of the eyebrow is the letter Nun. The two eyes are the letter Ain. Together they spell the divine attributes, hidden in plain sight for those with eyes to see. But in 1417 or 1418, the exact date is uncertain. Nesimi's wanderings brought him to Aleppo in Syria. It was a fateful decision. The governor of Aleppo, a man known for his orthodox piety, had recently come to power. He was determined to purge his territory of heretics. Someone, perhaps a jealous rival poet, perhaps a sincere believer in Orthodox Islam, denounced Nesimi to the authorities. Your Excellency, there is a man in your city who claims to be God incarnate. Act 3. The Ultimate Testimony. Chapter 7. The Trial. The court was crowded. Word had spread that the famous poet Nesimi was to be tried for heresy. Scholars, students, the merely curious, all pressed into the judgment hall. Governor, you are charged with claiming divinity for yourself, with blasphemy against the transcendent God, with teaching doctrines that corrupt the faith. How do you plead? Nesimi, I teach what I have discovered to be truth. If that is a crime, then I am guilty. Governor, do not play word games with me, poet. It is said you claim to be God. Is this true? Nesimi, I claim what every true Sufi has claimed, that the divine and the human are not separate, that God manifests through his creation, that the human being is the mirror in which the divine sees itself. Orthodox scholar. This is pantheism. This is heresy. The Quran clearly states that there is nothing like unto God. Nesimi. And I agree, there is nothing like unto God. But what if we have misunderstood that verse? What if it means that God is so utterly unique that he can be both transcendent and immanent, both beyond all creation and the very essence of creation? The debate went on for hours. Nesimi quoted Quran, Hadith, the great Sufi masters. He was eloquent, brilliant, unshakable. But his accusers were not interested in theology. They were interested in power, in orthodoxy, in maintaining control. Governor. Enough! I have heard enough. Nesimi, you are given one chance. Recant your heresies, declare that you spoke in error, and you will be spared. Nesimi. I cannot recant what I know to be true. Governor. Even if it means your death? Nesimi. Death is just another name for transformation. This body will perish, but truth is eternal. Orthodox scholar. You see, Your Excellency, he is unrepentant. There is only one punishment for such heresy. The governor pronounced the sentence. Nesimi was to be flayed alive. His skin was to be peeled from his body while he still lived, one of the most horrific executions imaginable. Chapter 8. The Martyrdom. What happened next has become legend. The execution was to be public, a warning to any who might follow Nesimi's path. The city gathered. Some came in horror, others in morbid curiosity, still others, the Hurufis hidden among the crowd, in grief and solidarity. Nesimi was brought to the place of execution. The executioners stood ready with their knives. The governor read the charges one final time and offered one last chance at recantation. Governor. Nesimi, this is your final opportunity. Deny your heresies and live. Nesimi. I have lived my truth. Now I will die it. Let us see if words can be killed. The execution began. It is said that Nesimi did not cry out in pain. Instead, he began to recite poetry, his own poetry, verses about divine love, about the unity of being, about the light that cannot be extinguished. Nesimi. They can peel the skin from my flesh, but they cannot reach the truth within. This body is just clothing. The real Nesimi is beyond their knives. Historical accounts tell us that when the executioners had flayed away the skin from his chest, Nesimi looked down at his exposed flesh and recited one final poem. Nesimi. Tear off my skin and make it into a drum, so that my voice may continue to speak truth. If they seek the secret of the eternal truth, let them look inside this crimson robe. These were his last words. The poet who had claimed divinity proved his humanity in the most profound way. Through suffering transformed into testimony, through death transformed into teaching. Among the crowd, a young man pushed forward, one of Nesimi's disciples. As the poet's body was finally still, the young man cried out, "Young disciple, they have killed the messenger, but the message lives. They have silenced the voice, but the words echo forever. Guard, seize him, he's one of them." But the crowd had turned. Even those who had come to watch a heretic die were disturbed by what they had witnessed. The brutality of the execution, contrasted with the serenity and courage of the victim, had created doubt. Crowd member. Can a man face such death with such peace unless his convictions are true? Another crowd member. Or unless he is mad. First member. I do not know, but I will never forget what I saw today. Chapter 9. The immortal poet Nesimi died, but Nesimi could not be killed. His poetry, written in 3 languages, spread throughout the Islamic world. His divans were copied in secret, passed from hand to hand, memorized by those who dared. The Hurufis continued, though persecuted. They spread to Anatolia, to the Balkans, influencing movements like the Bektashis, and even, some scholars argue, leaving traces in the Alevi tradition. But more than the movement, it was Nesimi's poetry that endured. In Azerbaijan, he became a national treasure, one of the greatest poets in Azerbaijani literary history. In Turkey, Persian-speaking regions, across the Middle East, His verses were recited, his courage remembered. Scholar. What made Nesimi extraordinary was not just his mystical theology, but how he expressed it. His poetry is beautiful, even if you don't agree with his ideas. The imagery, the passion, the technical mastery. He was a true artist, and artists have a way of outliving empires. Nesimi's central teaching, that the human being is not worthless dust, but the manifestation of divine attributes, resonated across centuries. In an age when religions often emphasized human unworthiness, Nesimi proclaimed human dignity. Nesimi, you who think yourself insignificant, awaken. You are the secret the universe keeps. You who bow your head in shame, lift up your face. It is written with divine names. This was dangerous in the 15th century. It remains challenging today. To proclaim that every human being carries divinity, what would that mean for hierarchies of power? What would that mean for prejudice, for oppression, for violence? If every face is the face of God, how can we harm another? If every person is sacred, how can we exploit, diminish, or destroy? These were Nesimi's questions, and they outlived him by centuries. Absolute. Act 4. Legacy and Meaning. Chapter 10. Hurufism. After Nesimi's death, Hurufism continued to evolve. Without its master poet, it became more fragmented, more underground. Some Hurufis went to the Ottoman Empire, where they influenced popular Sufism. Others went to Safavid Persia, though they were persecuted there as well. The science of letters that Fazlullah had developed continued to fascinate mystics and artists. The idea that the human body was a text to be read, that letters contain cosmic secrets, these ideas influenced Islamic calligraphy, poetry, even architecture. Calligrapher. When I write Allah, I am not just writing a word. Each curve of the letter carries meaning. The alif is the vertical connection between earth and heaven. The lam curves like the arc of divine mercy. The ha is the breath of the divine, speaking the cosmos into being. This was the positive legacy of Hurufism, a mystical aesthetics, a way of seeing divine presence in all things. But there was also tragedy. Hurufis continued to be persecuted. In 1527, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed the Conqueror's son ordered the burning of Hurufis in the Hippodrome of Constantinople. The movement went even further underground, its teachings preserved in secret, its poetry memorized by initiates. Chapter 11. Why Nesimi matters today. Why does a 15th century Azerbaijani poet matter in the 21st century? What can Nesimi's life and death teach us now? First, Nesimi reminds us that ideas cannot be killed by violence. The governor of Aleppo thought he was silencing heresy. Instead, he created a martyr whose fame spread far wider than it had during his life. Every tyrant should remember this. Persecution often immortalizes what it tries to destroy. Second, Nesimi challenges us to reconsider our relationship with the divine and with ourselves. In an age of nihilism, where many feel their lives are meaningless, Nesimi's radical claim that we are not separate from the ultimate source of meaning is provocative. Modern scholar. You don't have to accept Hurufi theology literally to appreciate its psychological insight. What if we lived as though our lives were sacred? What if we treated others as though they carried ultimate value? Nesimi's poetry asks us to live as if we mattered, because we do. Third, Nesimi's courage in the face of death reminds us that some things are worth dying for. He could have recanted, he could have lived, but he chose truth over safety, integrity over survival. We live in comfortable times, many of us. We rarely face such stark choices. But Nesimi's example asks, what are you willing to sacrifice for what you believe? What convictions do you hold so deeply that you would not abandon them even under pressure? Finally, Nesimi's poetry itself, its beauty, its passion, its mystical depths, reminds us of the power of art. Poetry cannot be eaten, cannot be worn, cannot be traded, and yet it endures when empires fall. Nesimi's verses have outlasted the governor who killed him, outlasted the empire that condemned him, outlasted the orthodoxy that called him heretic. Nesimi, when I am gone, do not weep for me, for I will not be gone. I will be in every word you speak. I will be in the wind, in the turning of the heavens, in every human face that you see with eyes of love. They have killed Nesimi the man, but Nesimi the meaning cannot die. For I am the letter that spells the world, and the world will continue to read me, until the last reader closes the last book, and all returns to the silence. For further contemplation, 1. What would you be willing to die for? 2. How does recognizing the sacred in every person change how we treat them? 3. Can mystical experience and rational theology coexist? 4. What is the role of the poet in society, entertainer or prophet? 5. How do we balance respect for tradition with the need for spiritual evolution? Recommended reading: The Poetry of Nesimi, Translations, The Science of Letters by Fazlullah Astarabadi, Works on Sufism and Islamic Mysticism, Studies on 14th to 15th Century Central Asian History. The end.